To all our viewers and supporters, our dear musicians, our teachers, and all people who loves music, good evening. When we watch group of musicians, we usually see somebody in front holding a wand. Sometimes, many people are thinking and asking, what does the Jude at the front of the band even do? He just waves his arms around and holds a stick. It is our great pleasure and pride to have conductors in any kind of musical ensemble. Believe it or not, the way someone moves her arms around has effect on the whole ensemble. If the pattern the conductor gives is smooth and welcoming, the players will follow his movement and react with more sensitivity and warmness to each beat. If the conductor has a very strict and strong sense of urgency while conducting, then some plays boldly and with more space in between notes. Conducting is an art of consolidating the efforts of a group of people engaging in musical performance together. It involves directing a group of musicians like ensembles and choir during the preparatory section and live performance of a musical piece. I know that all of us are eager to learn more and listen to this well-known conductor and music arranger. Thus, sit back, relax, and prepare your paper and pencil to take down important matters to enhance our knowledge and skills as our Pasambap President, Mr. Bombi Custodio, will introduce our guest for tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marivic Macadaeg of St. Louis University in Baguio. Welcome once again, friends and co-musicians, in another Pasambap online workshop. Tonight, the Pambansang Samahan ng mga Banda sa Pilipinas workshop is on its 36th workshop. And our topic for tonight is the great conductor, none other than Maestro Gerard Salonga. And he's guesting with us under the Outstanding Young Men Award. And to have a background of Maestro Gerard Salonga, the music director, a conductor, and an arranger, he is currently the resident conductor of the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra and the Orchestra of the Philippine Youth here in the Philippines. He was assistant conductor of the Hong Kong Philharmonic Orchestra, previously the music director of the ABS-CBN Philharmonic Orchestra. And he was running that from 2012 to 2020. And he had collaborations with conductors such as Jaap van Zweden, June Markle, Hans Graf, Yulong, Vladimir Ashkenazi, Mark Wigglesworth, and Leonard Slatkin. The conducting stints were Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra, Shanghai Opera House Orchestra and Chorus, Kaning Ni Symphony, Evergreen Symphony of Taiwan, Bangkok Symphony, Singapore Symphony, South Denmark Philharmonic Orchestra, Victoria, and the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. That was a lot of orchestras. Musical arrangements performed were with Hong Kong Philharmonic, Sydney Symphony, RTE Concert Orchestra, New York Pops, Guangzhou Symphony, Winnipeg Symphony, Cincinnati Pops, BBC Symphony, and Royal Philharmonic. Artist collaborations were both local and foreign. Lea Salonga, Wang Lihong, Wu Tung, Cecilica, Tengku Irfan, Michael Paul, and a lot more as listed in his curriculum vitae. In 2019, he collaborated with pianists like Cecilica and the Sonderjyllands Symphony Orchestra, the South Denmark Philharmonic, on a new recording of the works of George Gershwin for piano and orchestra, released under Dynacol label, and was immediately invited to make his subscription debut with the Orchestra of Sonderborg, Denmark, and Flensburg, Germany in 2021. Theater musicals were Carousel, They're Playing Our Songs, Dreamgirls, Baby, West Side Story, Sweeney Todd, and Little Women. Sweeney Todd again in 2019, Atlantis Theatrical in Manila, and in Singapore for Singapore Repertory Theatre. Awards he was an awardee 4 times of Aliw Awards for Best Musical Director, twice for Gawad Buhay Field Stage Award, and of course, the Outstanding Young Men Award in 2012. Upcoming endeavors with South Denmark Philharmonic, Hong Kong Philharmonic, and Singapore Symphony Orchestra, MPO, that's Malaysia Philharmonic Orchestra, and the Malaysian Philharmonic Youth Orchestra, and of course, the Orchestra of the Filipino Youth. So, let us welcome Maestro Gerard Salonga.
When I went off to study music, I knew right away that, okay, it's going to be arranging. So I studied that. I did take conducting lessons in school, but only because of requirement. Makatapos, kailangan makabuo ka ng dalawang conducting. And then an experimental program was started the same time I was there, where conducting lessons had more musicians. So we were part of this para kaming mga guinea pigs actually for this new part of the program. We started out with five keyboards actually to represent the different sections of the orchestra. There were 6 of us in the class, so we would rotate. 5 of us were playing, 1 is conducting, and then when pag oras na ng isa, gano'n na naman. Tapos the other 5 would be playing and another 1 would be conducting. So one guy would play strings, one guy would play woodwinds, one guy would play brass, at least to give the student a chance to work with an ensemble and then see kung paano mag-react yung ibang musicians dun sa galaw mo kaysa naman sa because normally in the beginning it's with a pianist or 2 pianos. You conduct condensed overtures or condensed movements for symphonies for 4 hands. Having a larger ensemble was a nice experience, but even then, after all of that, the next stage was a live small wind ensemble. We had 2 horns, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, that kind of thing, to get used to conducting a larger group of musicians. And then even after that, my heart was really set on being an arranger. So that's really where I spent the bulk of the early part of my professional life after I had graduated and worked in the US for a while. Came back home. Most of yung ginagawa ko was writing arrangements for different ensembles. I didn't really learn much about concert band until, syempre, nakakatrabaho ko yung mga ibang orchestral musicians na naka-root din sa kanilang mga banda. So, a lot of the wind players, halos lahat naman ng wind players sa atin ay nanggaling, nagsimula sa kanilang banda. And then keep on studying music. Eventually, they make it into a symphony orchestra. And it was through these people, people like Romy San Jose, because he connected me with Sir Bombi and DYSB, that I got to start to learn about, okay, what does a concert band really do in the Philippines? Because I had an understanding at that point that the concert band culture is very, very strong. Meron tayong malakas na kultura. Of course, it was handed down to us, syempre, from our Spanish colonial heritage. I have several Spanish colleagues here in the MPO. Our principal flute is Spanish. Our co-principal trombone is also Spanish. Our principal clarinet is Spanish. And I tell them about the bands in the Philippines. And they laugh kasi miski sa kanila, very similar yung kultura, alam nyo naman. We have, banda na may numero, and then pag sometimes there's a friendly competition that goes on with 2 bands in the same town or in the same city. Ganon din daw sa kanila. Basically, what we inherited was not just the bands themselves, but pati yung kultura ko, paano gumalaw yung mga banda sa nila. Ganon din ang nangyari sa akin. So they found that very interesting, that a country in Southeast Asia could have this same sort of culture that they have with their bands. Anyway, going back to the Philippines, it's a very strong musical culture that we have with concert bands, and the longer that I stayed and the more I worked with different people, it was very interesting to see how widespread it actually is, and how actually classical music is much more ingrained in society outside of Metro Manila than in Metro Manila. You would think sa Metro Manila, doon yung mga komo nag-aral or whatever. Pero you see the regular people come to a concert in Rizal or in Cavite, and they enjoy a performance of Tchaikovsky more than many of the people in Metro Manila. And I think that's the part of it that I'm most proud of pagdating sa concert band with band culture sa akin. Because prior to that, the only real contact that I had with concert band is when I worked as an arranger for the United States Air Force Band of the West. It's a very good concert band located in Texas. And while I was working in Los Angeles as an orchestrator, they opened auditions for a temporary position. They had a vacant position for parang in-house staff arranger. And part of the audition was kailangan mag-submit ka ng isang areglo para sa concert band, isang areglo para sa kanilang jazz band, which is like a proper big band, tapos isang areglo para sa kanilang small jazz band, which is like a nonet, parang AMP nonet that Mel Villena has, parang gano'n yung instrumentation. And this was my first time writing for a concert band. I'd never done. So I called one of my arranging teachers sa Berkeley na magaling mag-areglo ng concert band. So he gave me like a on the telephone crash course. Okay, dito compared sa orchestra, ito yung he also taught me orchestration for symphony orchestra. And I asked him, Donnie, I need to know how to write for a concert band. What is similar and what is different? And we went over some concepts, and then okay, he recommended some books, some recordings for me to listen to as well, just so I could understand the sound. So he recommended a lot of John Williams's arrangements for concert band. Sabi niya, you listen to John Williams concert band arrangements, and if they're performed by a really good band, like the President's Own in Washington, D.C., or the Eastman Wind Ensemble, you will understand it, and you will not miss the string section. Kung magaling yung banda, sounds like a symphony orchestra na hindi mo ma-miss yung string section. Okay, sige. So I bought these. I had to go pa to Tower Records nung araw. Wala namang Spotify, wala namang YouTube. I had to go and buy a CD of the U.S. Navy Band or of the Washington, D.C., U.S. Army Band, and listen to them, try to transcribe a little bit, get some scores, order some scores of good concert band pieces so I could understand how to write, and then I did this arrangement, sent it to the U.S. Air Force Band of the West, and it won me. I got in from the first phase. I had to go there for a live audition. So all right, we got your arrangements. Time to come to San Antonio for a live audition. So I went there, and part of the audition was two parts. No, the first part was a theory test, like an actual test. Parang exam talaga. So they provide you with a closed score. Okay, arrange this 24 bars for, sabihin nila kung ano instrumentation, 2 flutes, like 6 clarinets, 6 flutes, euphonium, 2 euphoniums, ganon. So you have to finish that in 20 minutes or 30 minutes. They give you that. There's a general theory test, right figured bass for this. And then after that, in the afternoon, is yung areglo mo, they will perform it for you. Tapos may mga nilagay silang mga it's basically an ear test. They'll play it with wrong articulation here or something, just to see how sharp my ears were. And it was down to the two of us in the final, and I won the audition. So for a few weeks, I was working with them as their arranger. I wrote some arrangements for their concert band, for their big band, and for their nonet. It was just a temporary position, so it didn't last very long. When they finally found a permanent who had to join the Air Force kasi I wasn't willing to join the Air Force to do that job, So I took the temporary position, and I learned a lot from it. Kasi yung mga musiko doon magagaling. It's a very, very good concert band. They're all salaried musicians. It's a full-time concert band basically, and they get, the U.S. defense budget is huge. Kasama sa defense budget yung budget ng instrumento nila, ganon. So they get all the nicest instruments. Meron silang like say percussion pa lang, meron silang pang indoor at meron silang pang labas. It's a totally different inventory of instruments that they have for indoor and outdoor. So they have real rosewood mallet instruments for concert hall, and they have the synthetic bars for playing outside, and it's all really good equipment. Um, but it was an interesting thing to see how a concert band worked, and that really helped me when few years later when I had to work with PYSB. At least kahit paano, I had the sound of the the concert band in my ears. Moving forward from that, I joined a recording studio as a composer arranger for this was from 2005 to 2011, and this studio hired its own in-house orchestra. It was a small chamber group, and our job was to record film scores or commercial recordings. Pero nung nagtatrabaho na kami, there would be days na wala kaming ginagawa masyado. So we figured, okay, let's put down some Mozart overtures or something, and let's try to keep our playing chops up. At the same time, that was my way of learning rep. I learned how to read scores and study scores for conducting that way. My score reading was already pretty good because of the amount of time that I had spent as an orchestrator and arranger. Syempre, you have to check your own music. But rehearsing an orchestra, really how to clean things up and how to rehearse, and just developing my ear to be able to hear inside the orchestra. I really credit that time. The orchestra's name was Philharmonica, and si Sir Bombi nakapag-casual with us there. And that was a valuable time for me because not being able to really study conducting anywhere, that was it for me. And the big problem for conductors is that conductors don't have an instrument to practice on. As instrumentalists, you have your flute that you can play anytime, or you have your clarinet dun sa bahay mo that you can play anytime. And a conductor doesn't have an orchestra in his house that he can play. You can do this all day in front of the mirror. Pero pag nandiyan ka na at may musiko sa harapan mo, it's a very different story. And the thing that I keep telling people about conducting that makes it so difficult is you have to perform, which is one thing. You have to receive, which is another thing. It's easy to do just one or the other. It's much easier to perform without having to receive. It's much easier to receive without having to perform. But when you're conducting an orchestra, you're doing both of those things at the same time, and in real time, you have to solve the problem. So that's a challenge that took me years to learn, but it served me in very good stead. After Philharmonica, we started the ABS-CBN Philharmonic Orchestra in 2012, and in 2016 was pretty much a turning point for me because I still didn't consider myself a conductor, even at that time. That's not it's 2021 now, so that's only 5 years ago. But even that time, I didn't really see myself as a conductor. I still thought of myself as an arranger, and I didn't think I would really amount to much as a conductor until Hong Kong Philharmonic opened up a position for assistant conductor. I applied, I tried it, and I made it into the finals. And there were 4 of us in the finals. And the thing about that was it was a live audition with the orchestra, and the music director was there. The music director's name is Jaap van Zweden. He is a Dutch conductor. He is now the music director of the New York Philharmonic. And he started his career at 19 years old. He became the concertmaster of the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam. So this guy is like a super, super, super musician. And he's conducted everybody. You can go to the Berlin Philharmonic website, my concert shell with Berlin Phil. He's conducted all over the world. And he has an extensive discography. And I knew that, okay, I want to learn from this guy. So he was there sitting there in the orchestra, doon sa katabi ng horn section, ganun lang siya sa akin. And the audition was Beethoven 5 and Brahms 1. That was the audition. And you won't know until 10 minutes before your audition kung anong movement yung gagawin mo. So I was there waiting in the dressing room, and they said, okay, Maestro said first movement of Beethoven 5 and last movement of Brahms 1. Okay. So I go out there, do my thing, finish the audition, shake his hand, and then I find out 3 or 4 days later that I won the audition. So that for me was like a convincing factor in my mind that okay, if this guy and this orchestra can see something that's worth him hiring me for this important job, because the job of the assistant conductor was if he got sick, I had to take his place. That's number one. And if he's rehearsing, he's working with the orchestra, I'm his extra ears in the audience. So I have a score and he's there. He will look back at me talaga. He really used me a lot. There was even one point, I think it was the first day that I worked with him, and we were rehearsing Mahler's Sixth Symphony, which has, of course, some parts that are extremely dense, very loud, lots of things going on. And he stopped and he looked back at me. I had my score and he goes, "Hey, Gerard, what's wrong with that?" Just like that. And I had to answer him right now, tell him what was wrong. And it was very, very, very good training for me because this guy has amazing ears. He just hears everything. So I really learned a lot from him about how to hear into the orchestra, not just the surface, because you listen to an orchestra, sometimes you'll just hear the surface, what's the very basic stuff. This guy taught me how to hear inside the orchestra and really hear what's going on in all parts, from top to bottom, middle especially. That's but really challenging thing to hear. So he taught me that because he's such an amazing string player. Yung insight na nabibigay niya sa string sound, I really learned that because I'm a pianist. My wife plays the violin extremely well. She's a fantastic violinist. But to hear what the things that he had to say about how to get the string sound, what the words that he would choose to say to the string section or even sa winds. Kasi dahil concertmaster siya ng Amsterdam Concertgebouw. If you guys don't know who the Amsterdam Concertgebouw is, look for them. It's one of the top 3 orchestras in the whole world. It's just one of the greatest orchestras and concert halls in the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra. It's just really one of the best. And for almost 20 years, he was their concertmaster before he decided to stop doing that and just start conducting that. So I learned a lot really from him, and I got a lot of confidence from the fact that I had to audition for him, and he hired me for the job. And we spent many hours looking at scores together, and he would be going, okay, when you conduct this piece, this is what you do. This is how you dig this out of the score. This is how you make music from this passage. And that really had a tremendous influence upon me, especially with a thing that he likes to call commitment. That you cannot stop trying to make it as good as it can be until the concert na. That's the only time na pass your papers, no more chance to fix it, is when magsisimula na yung concert. Pero every moment from the start until you get to that point, you're trying your best to keep moving, making the piece better and better, make the ensemble better and better. And you can't stop, or else dapat daw, kung di mo nagawa lahat ng magawa mo, napakalaking pagsisisi dapat yung mararamdaman mo. kung hindi mo ginawa, hindi mo pinilit talaga yung i-maximize yung pwede yung mangyari dun sa pyesa. So the time that I spent with him, because we even toured together with orchestra, the Hong Kong Phil toured Singapore and Australia in 2017, and I was with him. I was his assistant for that tour, just to see him work talaga. Just to see, he would show me his scores and lend them to me so I could see how he analyzed his scores, how he read them. We would read pieces together. I would go to his hotel, in Hong Kong, because he comes in about 10 to 15 weeks a year, basically. That's what he spends there. But he doesn't live there. He lives in a hotel. So I would be there at the same time, and we would meet up sa lobby. We'd open up some scores and go, okay, this is how this is going to work. And I learned a lot of repertoire in that time because I wasn't only assisting him. I was assisting him plus all the big guest conductors who would come. So we have, Vladimir Ashkenazy, who came to conduct the Beethoven Pastoral, and Glazunov as well. I learned some really good repertoire from him too. He's a very wonderful musician, really generous guy. You talk to him, he'll sit down with you and he'll talk about the piece with you, and kung saan mapupunta yung storya. A really good German conductor named June Markel, who was the music director of the Orchestra de Lyon in France. He is now our new music director here in MPO, so it was nice to reunite with him here when he came last year. Isa pa yun, really, really gracious and generous musician and fantastic conductor of French repertoire. When I assisted him in Hong Kong, the program was like mga Debussy, Image for Orchestra, and he was so good with that. He's fantastic. Also, another great conductor that I got to assist there was Hans Graf. He's an Austrian conductor who is now the Singapore Symphony music director. But he's also a pedagogue. He taught at the Mozarteum in Salzburg. So, one time we were having lunch and we were talking about conducting, talking about some technique, whatever. Then he suddenly gave me an impromptu lesson. He said, okay, do you know this piece? And then he said, whatever piece it was, and I think it was Egmont or something. Then, okay, get your fork and show me your intro. So I had to get my fork and show him my introduction to Beethoven. He's one of those guys, and it was nice to have just all these lessons and all this repertoire that I had to learn, both with Yap and both with the visiting conductors, and it really took me to the next level as far as understanding how these pieces work and how to enable an orchestra, which is basically, when people ask me what's the most important job of a conductor, what you're trying to do is you're trying to enable your ensemble. Kahit ano man yun, whether you're conducting a children's orchestra or your community band, your job as the conductor is to enable them to deliver the best possible performance at the right time. Now, to get maximum peak performance at the most important time, which is when the audience is there to listen. Ngayon, syempre, it's easy to say enable your ensemble. What does that mean? Well, there's lots of things, right? You have to study your score. You have to rehearse your orchestra properly. You have to understand the way people learn. You have to understand the way people retain information. You have to plan your rehearsals well. You have to understand that you teach them one movement today, and the next 2 days are spent on other things. By the time you get to the fourth day, that first movement is forgotten. Stuff like that. Understanding the way people learn and understanding how musicians learn music at different levels, of course, because by this time in my life, I've conducted orchestras of extreme levels, from youth orchestras in the Philippines or youth bands in the Philippines to amazing symphony orchestras like this one. There's a pretty big difference in the approach, how to talk to these people. But basically, the bottom line for all of this, the common denominator is that the best conductors are the ones who are most capable of enabling their ensemble to reach the best possible, highest possible level, maybe a level that they didn't know they had before the concert. If you can do that, then you've done a good job. And that's all I have to say. Sir Bobby, kung may tanong pa kayo or anything, I'll be very happy to share.
Napakaganda, no? Your stories are really very interesting and very helpful to us. Let's ask Miss Marivic if there are questions already online.
Sir Gerard, we have here series of questions actually. So
Okay.
I think some of the items you had touched it already when you were discussing, but I think they need a little bit detailed answers from the discussion that you had given. So for our first question, Sir Gerard, anong paraan para mapaunlad at mapataas ang kalidad sa larangan ng manunugtog or ng mga musika dito sa ating bansa?
Pwede po malaman kung kanino nanggaling yung tanong? I'd be very interested to know who's asking.
Galing po kay Sir Rolf Campos, sir.
Sir Rolf, kamusta kayo? I mean, there are many ways, no? I guess it would have to really start with the level of, ano, yung level of training of the students. If we're going to focus the conversation on instrumental performance, for example, kung doon natin ililimit yung usapan, then it's simple. The musicians that I've worked with, of course, like I said earlier, I've worked with musicians from a lot of different places. And you have musicians like the ones we have here who are extremely well trained. That's probably the biggest thing, because talent, lots of people have talent, and Filipinos are innately musical. We're famous for our singers. We're famous even amongst the European musicians here. They know that choral singing and singing in general is a very strong musical component in the Filipino personality. They know that they know who the Lobok Children's Choir are, because these choirs like Lobok, they've gone to Europe and they've performed, and they've been very well received. They've won international competitions. So our choir culture is revered and respected. And seeing the differences between the level of instrumental playing, if you want to look at instrumental playing, we've had, of course, our successes. Diba? We've had the Cecil Licads who have gone to Curtis, and Rowena Arrieta who's gone to Moscow, and other arts as well. We've had ballerinas, we've had visual artists who have done all, composers as well, choir conductors who have studied abroad. It's really the level of the training that the kids can receive. If there's a way that we can get that level of training to them, then it'll be more possible, because that's really what it is. I mean, a lot of it has to do with also teacher training, because it's one thing to be a good performer yourself, and it's another thing to be a good pedagogue, right? I mean, so that's also another area. I mean, the discussion will last how many? It'll take us weeks to talk about just that simple, small topic of what's it going to take para mapaunlad yung kalidad. Awareness is another one. A lot of these musicians, again, who are here, for example, our principal double bass here, he used to be a member of the Berlin Philharmonic before he came here to become the principal bass. So can you imagine the sound that is there in his ears, right? What to him is a good sound? It's the sound of the Berlin Philharmonic. If you don't know that sound, how can you make it? He knows that sound. That's why he's able to make it. That's why he's able to teach it. I mean, that's an old saying, right? You can't give what you don't have. So that's a really key component, I think, because you have to pass it on to somebody. So that's just one of the things, I think. And there's many more, but it'll be a really long discussion. I mean, we have the question. The issue is that do we have the teachers in the Philippines? Yes, we do, but there's not enough of them. That's our problem. There are many fine teachers, but there are not enough of them to have a truly nationwide lift. They're all centralized in Metro Manila. Diba? Kung titingnan natin kung nasaan ang best teachers natin ng instrumental study, what's the percentage? I would think more than 90% of the best ones are in Metro Manila or surrounding areas. Luzon, at least, So paano na si Visayas at Mindanao? Where are you going to find enough people to train kids, and identify the talented kids, get them sent to the capital to study with the best teachers that we have in Manila? So that's an uphill climb to make that happen. And then for them to go back to where they came from and spread that out there. Wow, ilang generations ang kakailanganin nun for that to work. Yeah. Yun po. That's so I can keep on talking forever about it, but I don't want to use up so much time. So if you have another question, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Sir Gerard. This is a question coming from me. I'm also a teacher in the high school. At the same time, I also handle a marching band here in Baguio City. So aside from having the best education in music, what are the most important traits that a conductor or a leader must possess to attain success?
Okay. Certain people are able to achieve a moral influence on their constituents. For example, a musician, a body of professionally trained orchestra musicians would be very reluctant to be led by someone who they felt was at least a really good musician. And many of you who have played, like Sir Bombi has played in orchestras for a very, very long time. It takes an orchestra about 5 seconds to know if the conductor is a good musician or not. It's very quick. Minsan upbeat lang, alam nila kung magaling ka na o hindi. That's all. That's all it takes. And they can make their decision within 4 bars of music if I really want to follow this guy or not. And if the answer is yes, then the conductor has achieved already the trust of the musicians. And that comes from all these, it's almost hard to write it down or list it down. That's what makes conducting such a mysterious job. Because so many people study it, so many people learn it, but how many people really can say they're able to do it? See, that's what makes it so difficult, because it entails not just skill at an instrument. It doesn't entail a high level of a certain kind of skill. You have conductors who have wonderful stick technique who achieve mediocre results. But then you have conductors who have no technique at all, but the sound from the orchestra is magic. I've seen it happen in person. I've assisted conductors who have fantastic, perfect, kamay. But orchestra plays a sound na okay lang, But then I've worked with conductors who have zero techniques, nothing. But the sound is unbelievable. So there's something extra that they have na hindi mo ma-describe, hindi mo ma-verbalize. You just know. You see them, and you just know, oh, this guy is a musician, and I will follow them. I will play my very best for this person, because he's able to inspire people. So there are some people like that. That's why only a handful of people can ever become president, because they have that special quality in them that makes them leaders. So I'm sorry if I'm not really answering your question, Miss Marivic. Pero it's combination of different qualities. Diba? We have this thing that we call charisma sometimes, that you don't know why, but this person just has it. And you don't know why, but this other person does not. So di mo ma-explain it. It's very hard. But there was a conductor actually named what's his name? Gustav Meyer. Actually, he was a very well-known, very well-loved conducting teacher at Peabody Institute in Baltimore. And he was head of the Masters of Conducting there in Peabody, and he had a lot of great students. And I got to know one of his students very well, became a friend of mine. And he said that one of the key components now was being able to was having a musical pursuit other than conducting that you did very, very well. And that was one of the things that could enable the musicians to hold on to you. For example, Darian Barenboim, he's an amazing concert pianist, right? He's also a great conductor, but it's because he's an amazing pianist that, okay, I can follow this guy. He's really good at that. Or Esa-Pekka Salonen is a fantastic composer, di ba? Ang ganda ng mga compositions ni Esa-Pekka Salonen. So okay, that's parang for him, for Professor Meyer, that was the thing that earned these musicians their sort of moral right to stand on the podium and lead the orchestra. In the case of Jaap van Zweden, like the whole orchestra knows how an amazing violinist he still is until now, and was as a professional in the Concertgebouw. So it's that. But then there are others. It doesn't account for the others who were not so great at all these things, but then stand on the podium and really command the respect of the orchestra. That's already a mystery. You just don't know why. Sometimes galaw lang nila. I mean, there's a story. It's a Berlin Philharmonic that was recounted by one of their older timpani players. Orchestra was rehearsing. He was there reading along his score, and then the sound of the orchestra suddenly changed. The Berlin Phil suddenly became beautiful, and it's because Wilhelm Furtwängler, their former music director, entered the room. That guy just entered the room and changed the sound of the orchestra just by standing there in the doorway. So, ano yun, di ba? Parang their only explanation for that was this man carries the sound within him so strong that you can't help but let it come out when you're in his presence. Parang ganon. Ashkenazi was the same. If you look at Ashkenazi, it's a bit hard to follow this, but he has the music coming out of his skin. That's just how great he is, and it infects the orchestra. So I guess it would also take a certain level of orchestra to be able to follow that. If he was working with a children's orchestra, it might have disastrous results. But if he's working with a top-class orchestra that can play together no matter what you do in front of them, then they'll be aware enough to capture that magic and turn it into a sound. So, long story short, being a good musician and then a lot of mysterious secret ingredients that nobody knows.
Thank you very much, Sir Gerard. I think this question is related to what you are discussing, so it is connected. This question comes from Sir Ariel Constantino. What advice can you give to conductors who are just waving their hands and does not pay attention to intonation and balance of sound in a band or in an orchestra?
Well, kanina I touched on it a little bit. No, the job of a conductor is to enable, because ito po yun, the composer wrote a piece. No, a composer creates a piece of music. And that piece of music is not music. It's just a page with printed notes and rests or whatever else that's there. No, that's not music. Music only exists when somebody's making the sound. That's the only time the music is there. It's not like a statue that, once the sculptor is finished, that's it. It's there like that forever. Once the painting is done, that's it. It's there forever. Music only exists in a time and a place. Because of that nature of music, the process was the composer felt something, right? Heard something, thought of something, tried to convert that into notation and all its inherent limits. Music notation is an extremely vague form of written communication. There are so many blanks that you have to fill. And as a musician, as a performer or a conductor, doesn't matter. You look at a score that's given to you, and then and you try to get back what the composer was thinking and feeling, and send that out to your audience. You sort of do the reverse process, right? You read what they wrote and try to understand what it is that they were feeling at the moment that they put it on the paper. Now, part of enabling the audience to receive that is making sure that the ensemble is able to do all these things with a degree of fluency. What do I mean by fluency? If you listen to a newscaster, or if you listen to the president of the United States giving a speech, right? And they stutter or they have a speech impediment, it doesn't work. Or if you listen to anybody, a politician or a newscaster delivering a message, and they can't say the words right, that's a technical problem, but it affects the outcome of what they're trying to deliver. Now, as a musician, you're trying to deliver this piece of music, and you have 6 clarinets that are all over the place with intonation. How is that music supposed to get to the audience with all that distraction that is caused by the distortion? You know, because what Ariel is talking about is intonation, ensemble, I think, blend as well. Just sabi mo lang sa akin, Ariel, kung tama yung sinasabi ko. No? Kapag wala kasi yun, madidistract yung audience. Di nila matatanggap ng puro yung intention ng composer. These are all little detail-oriented problems, but when you add them all up, no, they can really distract from the sound. Because what if you're playing something that has to sound extremely beautiful? Because there are some pieces of music that are supposed to be terrifying and even ugly, you know? So some Shostakovich, not all Shostakovich has to be pretty, diba? There is some stuff that has, like, you listen to Shostakovich, some of this has to be like really the sounds of destruction, diba? In all these Shostakovich symphonies, you have these extremely loud, terrifying moments. But if you have to play something that is beautiful, how can it sound beautiful when it's out of tune? or if the sound isn't good, diba? If composers asking for a warm sound and you give them a harsh metallic sound, then you're not delivering the music, not doing any justice to the composition. So it really all goes back to music. Whatever the conductor does for the orchestra or for the band has to be rooted always in the music. And all these other things are functions of that. So if the orchestration that you see in the score, you watch look at the technique that the composer puts on their orchestration, requires a certain sound, a new sound to be born by the sound of 2 instruments mixing together, for example. That's actually part of the art of orchestration, mixing timbres and creating a new sound out of that. Paano magbe-blend yung dalawang tunog kung hindi sila apinado, for example? It's never gonna blend. For example, you're trying to mix euphonium and bass clarinet, for example, lang, no? And if the bass clarinet is almost a semitone higher than the euphonium, how are you going to get that blend? All you're going to hear is matigas na bass clarinet at euphonium na tumutugtog ng pasahe. You're not going to hear that new sound. What happens when you take a bass clarinet and euphonium and they have a baby, and that's the new sound. So that's one of the things that has to be looked after by the conductor, and it doesn't always 100% fall on the conductor. Like here, for example, of course, it's hard to compare, not because this is such a high level ensemble already here. Every musician here knows when something is sharp or flat. They know. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything. When you hear something that's sharp, you look at them and their eyebrows already do that. They already know what happened. You don't have to tell them. They're very aware of what they're doing. They're aware of what everyone else is doing around them. And almost all of them read a score. So they know what's going on. Like you don't have to tell the horns, third horn, kasabay mo rito, second basun. You don't have to. He already knows. They already know. They've seen a score. So it's a different issue, no? Pero when you're dealing with training level ensembles, children or students, no, you have to point these things out to them, and you have to have good enough ears to be able to tell them whether what they're doing is right or wrong, which actually is a very tough thing to do. To be able to, you have to know the stuff so well that you have to be, and you have to have such trustworthy ears. That's the thing. It's difficult. You have to be good enough to not lose that trust. Because pag sinabi mo sa isang musiko na matigas siya, malambot pala, then you've lost already the trust. The trust just goes straight down. They're not going to believe you anymore after that. That's why it's especially with the better the orchestra gets, the more careful you have to be about calling out intonation. But that's definitely one of the jobs. But also, I would think if you're training your band, teach the musicians how to detect the problems themselves as well. I mean, I hope I answered your question. You can, I mean, Ariel, kaibigan naman tayo, you can always message me if you need a longer answer. Yes, ma'am, Maribik, kung meron pa kayong mga tanong. Basically po, I mean, with regard to the last part of this question, which is conductors, flapping around or whatever you want to call it, just like the earlier point I was making, everything has to be rooted in the music. Do it because the music needs it. There will always be, because there's no curtain in front of the orchestra or the band, there's always going to be some sort of visual component to it, and we know that from history, some of the greatest conductors were able to project in all directions, not just out towards the orchestra, but the priority really is always in the music. It has to always be in the music. Even the things that you say to the orchestra, it's always music, always about the music.
Thank you, Sir Gerard. And a follow-up question. Aside from playing the piano, sir, do you play any brass wind or woodwind instrument?
No. I tried playing the trumpet, but I failed. I learned through the experience of other people, actually. I was very lucky in that regard. I got to work with lots of musicians, and I enjoy talking shop. I enjoy shop talk. So if I'm with bassoonists, we'll talk about bassoon. If I'm hanging out with the bassoon players here, we'll talk about bassoons and reeds and all these things that they need. Bassoon repertoire. I listen to a lot of chamber music. I was lucky that I got to work with a lot of experts who are really fantastic at their instrument, and who have learned at the highest levels, have played at the highest level. For example, Ben Mormon, who is the principal bassoon of the Hong Kong Philharmonic, is a good friend of mine. We talked about a lot of things about bassoon, and he studied with Judy Leclerc, who is the principal bassoon of the New York Philharmonic. That's his teacher. My other friend Vance Lee, who galang din ni Sir Bombi, and he studied with the longtime principal of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Right, so I got a lot of this information, a lot of this high level stuff. I was very lucky that it got passed down to me through some extremely generous and very, very talented people. Like orchestral string playing, I learned a lot from my colleagues in the Hong Kong Philharmonic, from people like my wife, from my colleagues here, from Jaap van Zweden. All this knowledge got passed on, and I really took it very seriously and learned as much as I could. Actually, even before I conducted, because even as an arranger, you have to already know the instruments that you're writing for. You cannot write something for trumpet that they can't play. You cannot write something in a low register and expect them to play it pianissimo. You cannot write extremely high notes for the oboe and make them play it at the softest possible dynamic, things like that. In Berkeley, I was very lucky that the system that they used for teaching us instruments, it wasn't just lowest note on the instrument and then highest note on the instrument. It wasn't that simple. Every instrument that we studied there as arrangers was divided into seven or eight sectors, right? So for example, you have the lowest note of a clarinet and then the highest note of a clarinet for a virtuoso. We always looked at it from the idea from the standpoint of you're writing for a virtuoso, kunyari. Ito yung lowest note na magagawa niya, which is fixed, of course. And then here's the highest note that Benny Goodman can play on a clarinet, for example. And then they'll divide that range into smaller ranges, no? And then they'll say, ito, bulong lang ang kaya nito. This cannot play higher than mezzo piano. And this is the kind of sound. From here to here naman, this kind of sound, and you can use this kind of dynamic. And then there's the break of a clarinet. There's a break. Don't cross this. Then from that point, dito, mas maraming dynamics ang pwede, mas maraming articulation. So we really went in depth into all of that. That's the first part. The second part is how these instruments combine with other instruments. So we start with small ensembles. The very first ensemble we write for in Berkeley is 2 trumpets, 1 alto sax, 1 tenor sax, 1 baritone sax. Just those 5 instruments. So we learn everything we can about those 5 instruments. And then later on, may dagdag na, may trombone pala. Tapos later on, dagdag yung second trumpet, dagdag yung baritone saxophone. So we learn from a small group, try to get some concepts together and get a strength in that concept. And then we start, by the time I was in my 5th semester, we were studying already the symphony orchestra woodwind section, including contrabassoon. So basically it's piccolo, 3 flutes, 3 oboes, English horn, 3 clarinets, bass clarinet, 3 bassoons, and contrabassoon. How to write for that ensemble. That's it. No strings, no percussion, nothing. We're taught for a whole semester how these instruments work by themselves, how they work with each other. So it was a very good system. So by the time I was done out of that school, and I got very, very good grades. So I really studied very, very hard. So by the time we were done, we knew about the instruments quite well, and how to write sensibly for them. We weren't, we were always taught like, okay, the book says this, but real life says this also. There's what the book will say, and then there's also real life difficulties. Like, don't write these types of leaps for the bassoon. It's just not possible. You can do the leap at a certain tempo. After you get past a certain tempo, it's off limits na kasi even a virtuoso cannot do it. Parang ganon. We're given the limits of what instruments can do, and I knew pretty much all of that before I started taking conducting seriously. So I had a bit of a head start. And so by the time that I started talking with all these guys and became friends of mine, it was reinforcement and mostly anecdotal. So they would give me more, more specific situations. Okay, when you're conducting this symphony, for example, this bassoon part is really hard to tune. These two, the first bassoon, second bassoon, pag this bar in this piece, you have to keep your ears open kasi napakahirap apinahin, or it's hard to blend. The oboe has a hard time blending with the third horn in this movement of this piece. Naging ganon na. It was already more like that. That way, every time I had to conduct it, my ears were already open, ready to hear the problem and have a solution ready. And it just occurred to me, a further answer to Ariel's earlier question. Going in the concert has to be a product of what happened in rehearsal. Okay. Now, if I'm in a rehearsal, and like I said earlier, conducting is, especially in a rehearsal situation, you're sending energy to the band, diba? You're trying to project energy. At the same time, you're listening to them, and you're trying to solve the problems at the same time. Para when you stop, you have the answer. That's what you hope will happen. No, and if, like he says, if you're doing too many things and not really paying attention, then there's a problem there. Ngayon, pag performance na, concert na, ay wala na. You just do whatever you can do whatever you want. If the ensemble is properly rehearsed, then it's showtime. Basically in the performance. But that's why whenever someone asks me if I think someone is a good conductor or not, I cannot answer that question until I've seen them rehearse, because that's where it is. That's where you really see the substance, because that's when the conductor, first of all, is able to talk. Right? You can't talk in the concert, but you can see you can really see what's in their mind in the rehearsal. Yeah. Sorry. Yun po.
Thanks, Sir Gerard. And in relationship to your conducting, was there an experience that you were lost in the score in the actual performance or concert?
There's ways to say lost, meaning lost in the music, because it happens all the time. You get lost in the music, right? It takes over and it becomes bigger than anybody, all of you put together on the stage. I don't know if they meant that, because that's a good thing. And there's also a bad kind of lost na hindi mo na alam kung nasaan ka. No, not really. I don't remember it happening to me. If it's ever happened, it's been banished from my memory, kaya hindi ko na siya maalala. Pero you have to be ready. I mean, things can happen in a concert, right? Somebody can forget how many rests they've counted and come in early or come in late or something. A soloist might forget where they are and just try to put things back together. But basically, you can avoid all of that by just knowing the music, just knowing it, knowing how it goes. That's it. Yeah. I mean, if the question is, have you ever been lost in the music during a performance, in the good sense, I'll go, yeah, many times. Especially when the orchestra is good and I can really trust them. That's another thing. You have to learn when to sort of let it go and let the orchestra play. And if you've done your job in the rehearsal room, then the easier it is for that to happen. Because if you allow the music to unfold naturally and just trust in what's going on, then the audience will experience that as well. And the music will speak something greater than all of you on stage. But I mean, if you have a score in front of you on stage, there's no reason to get lost na siguro. Kung yung masamang klaseng dof, may score ka na nga dyan sa harapan mo.
Baka kasi, sir, lumipad yung score. Nasa open space yung concert.
Pero if I were conducting, okay, as a bit of advice, if you know you're going to conduct somewhere na baka mahangin na yung score mo, then you memorize it na. Para you're ready. Kahit ano pang mangyari, ready ka na. Because anything can happen in a concert. Lalo na sa banda, you're outdoors, you're exposed to the elements, anything can happen. That can be scary. So prepare na lang. Take weeks to prepare your. I mean, as a general rule, I'll prepare, at least 1 day per minute of music, of preparation. So if it's a 45-minute piece, I'll take 45 days to learn that score.
Thank you very much, Sir Gerard.
Yeah. Chaik 6 I took 6 months of preparation to conduct before I conducted Chaik 6 in Manila. So it's really a lot of prep, because it's not just learning the notes. To learn the notes and know what they are, that's just the first step. There's so many steps after that. It's not just knowing, oh, this is 3/4, this is 4/4. No. That's just number one. That's just ABC. For me, I'm not ready until I know what's behind the page. Until I've gotten to that point and I really feel that connection with what's on the other side, and I know exactly how I want it to sound, I'm not ready yet. Yeah. So it's by the time I get to that point, then I know the thing really, really well already. Basically my first step is to do 10 trips through the score, each time looking for something different. I'll do a first trip is to look at the broad strokes. What's the key? Who's playing? These things. What's the form? Second step is I'll look at each part. Third step is what's articulations. Fourth step, dynamics. Fifth step, harmonic analysis. Stuff like that. Each time I go through, I'm looking at a different facet. And then once that's finished, then comes sort of a creative type of work where I'm looking at it and trying to imagine, let my fantasy go, and okay, what kind of a feeling do I want to project with this? And what was the composer feeling when he wrote this? Why it's like this? Why is this sound? What's the feeling? What sound takes precedence over another? Why did Mendelssohn put two instruments in unison, but one of them has an accent and one of them does not. See, why? Yung mga ganon, that's what happens as I get closer and closer to the rehearsal. Pero ang feeling ko dapat, a week before the rehearsal, I'm very 100% convinced in how it should come out. I have a strong conviction, because if you don't have that, you cannot convince the musicians in front.
Thank you, Sir Gerard. So I still have two questions with me, and I think these questions would be related to each other. This pandemic has deprived so many musicians, and practicing face-to-face and having rehearsals or even gig. So what are the different advices can you give to our musicians to uplift their situations and to convince, especially those who are beginners or even at the middle of their career, so that they can continue on improving in their chosen field? And in connection with it, do you believe that, or what can you say about the situation of the musicians here in the Philippines? Is there a chance that the Philippine government will support these musicians? Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's start with the first part. Lahat tayo apektado ng pandemic. It's affected, obviously, yung pinaka-obvious syempre is the economic devastation that it's caused. Our livelihoods have been put to a stop. Unless you're lucky enough to be salaried with your job, kung saan man yun, no? Yeah, it's very unfortunate and very discouraging. I recently did a webinar with the Malaysian Philharmonic Youth Orchestra, our youth orchestra here. One of the questions that was fielded to me was, how do you keep yourself motivated? Because it's so easy to be demotivated. Kasi hindi naman sila working pa naman as musicians, they're still students. And a lot of them found themselves demotivated. They just don't want to do anything. They're just not excited. And I told them, well, if I feel demotivated, all I do is listen to music and I'm motivated again. Because if you listen to a great performance, then you'll realize, wow, layo ko pa. I gotta get back to work because I'm so far away from that level. I still have so much to do if I want to get that level. That's probably the first thing I would do for people who are feeling down and demotivated. Remember, if you're a musician, you're a music lover first, right? You don't become a musician unless you love music. So listen to music. Listen to music that you like. Listen to music that you never knew before. Listen to a piece of music that's brand new to you, whether it's an old piece of music na hindi mo pa naririnig, have you heard, if you're an orchestral musician, have you listened to all of Beethoven's symphonies? Can you sing for me Beethoven 1 until Beethoven 9? So if you don't know Beethoven 1, listen to it. And give yourself a mini program a little thing for yourself. Like one thing that I did was listen to Beethoven 1 to 9. I just want to listen to it in order. So I did a Spotify playlist for myself, and I have all the scores here in our library in Petronas has all the scores. So I said, okay, I can actually listen to 1 to 9 and look at the score, see what's going on, see how the writing evolved, just to keep my interest levels going and expand my own repertoire. The repertoire is so big that if you're at the beginning or in the middle of your musical life, and I don't like to call it a career, because music is so much more than a job. It's a kind of life. That at this part, if you're in the middle of your musical life, that still means there's a mountain of repertoire left for you to learn. So listen, if you're a sax player, have you tried to learn Glazunov concerto? Have you listened to it? If you're a bassoon player, or if you're a bunch of woodwinds together, have you tried to get together to read the Grand Partita? Stuff like that. Do you know it? And I've come across so many musicians who who, you know, are so quick to complain that, oh, my situation, my situation, my situation. But I asked them to sing for me the exposition of the the Mozart concerto for their instrument, and they can't do it because they didn't learn it. See, so it's not whose fault is that, right? So you have look at the things that you can control and look at the things that you cannot, and act on the things that are within your control. So if such the pandemic is out of our control, right? But what's in our control? The things that I can do for myself as a musician to get out of this pandemic a better musician than when it started. That's what you want. That's what you want, right? Kung ano yung level mo when the pandemic began, make a list of things that you can do so that that level is higher by the time the pandemic's finished. And you can come out a stronger musician who will play better, know more, and be of better service to your community as a musician. As that's what we do as musicians. We're in the business of service. We're providing whatever it is that music provides for people. We're providing that, right? Whether it's an escape, whether it's fantasy, whether it's entertainment, it doesn't matter. Education, it doesn't matter. Art doesn't matter. Joy, all of that. That's our job as musicians. So whatever can make you do that better, do it so that you can get out of this pandemic. Inspire yourself with music. If music can't inspire you, then don't be a musician. Sorry, I have to say it like that. I know it's a hard thing to say, it's a hard thing to hear, but that's true. If music itself can't inspire you, then what are you doing being a musician? Diba? And also, since we're talking about bands and ensembles, the musicians you play with should also inspire you. So look to the people that you play with for inspiration as well. Try to inspire them. For example, if there are two of you and you live next door to each other and you're able at least to make some kind of contact, like na socially distanced, o di mag-drone yung isa at mag-interval tuning exercise kayo. Diba? For example, one plays low C. Okay, just play low C, so stay on low C, and the other one tries to play a major third above it and really try to nail that interval. That's going to train your ears. Or use a friend to hold the tuner and you try to play the note perfectly, and they will tell you if you're high or low, because you don't want to train your eyes, you want to train your ears. If you have a tuner in front of you and you're just trying to fix your intonation to match the tuner, you're training your eyes. You cannot use that in the performance. So have a friend hold the front of the phone and then tell you, up, matigas ka, mababa ka. At least your ears are being trained. That's how we train the kids here. Tell them, don't look at the tuner because it's going to train your eyes more than your ears. You want to train your ears. So someone else holds the tuner and tells them, para they can hear the difference. Or one of them plays a drone, a single note, sustained. Other one tries to play an interval. Perfect fifths are always a problem with younger musicians. I find it here. So, okay, let's do perfect fifths. Just fantastic consonant perfect fifths na hindi nagwiwabble, yung walang ganon, And then, isa pa, unison. Isa pang killer yan, unison. So, it's just unison all day. And if you do that with someone, a friend of yours who's a musician, then, or even do it with the phone, try to unison with the phone. That's already one way to get up. And it doesn't take much. I mean, Shepherd, there are things that we cannot do in the pandemic, but for example, at the OFY, we're doing online lessons, and the teachers, we have had our first week, and as the week has progressed, each of them has figured out sort of a way to tweak the standard model para mag-work, for it to be effective. So, minsan, pag masama yung audio ng signal that day, what they'll do is, sige, I'll wait for 10 minutes, record a short clip of your playing, and then send it to me, then I'll listen, at least maliwanag, then we'll call again and I'll tell you, what you can do. Mga ganon. So they try to figure out, gawa paraan. Figure out a way, be ingenious. Ay, sama ng tunog sa Zoom, wag na lang. So that's not Zoom's fault anymore. That's your fault now for not thinking of a way around it. Because there are ways pa rin naman. You can't really, for example, deal with sound production over Zoom or Facebook Messenger, right? But you can deal with other things that are necessary. So you can talk about rhythm. Rhythm is easy over the internet. You can do that. But separate tone production is a different story. But you can, in the case of bassoons, you can give a mini seminar on how to really do it the right way, what's a good read, what's a bad read, things like that. And give them exercises to try to do intonation or whatever it is. If you have a neighbor, or if you're in your subdivision, you're allowed to at least stand within 20 feet of each other, then you can play some games with each other. Unison games, perfect fifth games. Those would be great. Just to awaken up the ears, and have a third person there na medyo matalas ang tenga to tell you kung okay siya o hindi. Or record it, send it to someone who can hear. They'll tell you, ay, masyadong malapit yung perfect fifth doon. Ay, dito, masyadong malayo, Yun po.
Sir Gerard, you mentioned about doing it in Zoom or in Messenger. A question given by Mr. Ethan Ventura of St. Louis University, Baguio City. Is there a possibility that you will be giving a workshop on orchestration and arranging?
I've never thought of it. No one's ever asked. Really, I've never thought of. Kasi po, I'm very reluctant to teaching kasi I have such a high regard for teachers that, just like with the conducting, remember I told you earlier my story that parang I didn't consider myself a conductor. So I thought it was just beyond me. You know what I mean? Because I have such a high respect for the good conductors. I can never do that. Parang ganon. I suffer from impostor complex once in a while, So I don't want to be a fake, I want to be the real thing. And I know that to be the real thing is so unbelievably hard, So I've always been reluctant din sa teaching kasi I've had such amazing teachers. I've learned from my first arranging teacher was Ryan Kayabyab. Mr. C just knows everything, diba? And I had these teachers in the States who taught me arranging, who taught me orchestration. Na grabe, they just look at, imagine, this is without, hindi pa uso nung time na yun yung playback ng Sibelius, tapos mabibigyan mo ng MP3 yung magi-inspect ng score mo. My teacher in Berkeley was looking at my full score, no instrument. And he could tell me, he's looking at it lang, ay, these trombones, arrange it like this. Ganon. Imagine, kaya niya yun. And for me, that's the kind of person you have to be. If you're going to claim na kaya kong magturo ng arranging or kung kaya kong kumumpas ng orchestra or whatever, you have that ability. You take a score, tell them, ay, ito yung problema. Bilis. Just right there with no instrument. They were able to figure it out. And these are transposed scores. We were made to submit transposed scores, not even concert scores. So he just was able to tell, he has his red pen. It'll be better if you do your three trombones this way. Tapos siyempre, pag uwi ko ng score ko noon, on the piano, I try it my way first. Okay, pwede na. Then I try it his way. It's like 50 times better, 100 times better. He knew it. He just knew. He knew what chord I was trying to express, and he knew the right way to do it. I mean, if you're going to teach arranging or orchestration, for me, you have to be that good, or else don't do it. It'll be irresponsible. I don't know. The answer to that question is, I'll think about it when I'm confident enough. I feel that I actually can. Kasi it's such a big responsibility. I really hold teachers on a pedestal. So it's almost like no, I can't do that. It's too high. I can't do that. But in an informal setting, I've actually taught quite a few people, and they say they learned a lot from me. So I guess if it's a more informal conversation, maybe if it were halimbawa, I've given conducting master classes here in MPO to several up and coming Malaysian conductors, and we had the orchestra, the actual orchestra with us. I was very confident with that because I'm doing a lot of that now, and the fact that I got the job in Hong Kong Phil, the fact that I won the position here as well, the fact that I got invited in Denmark after spending a week with the orchestra, they invited me before I even left the country. I have lots of confidence in my conducting. You know what I mean? Because I have so much proof, and the sound that I get back is the proof to me that I'm able to help them create that sound. But arranging and orchestration is something that I do all by myself, and I don't know. I would love to talk more about it. Maybe who was it again, ma'am? Who asked the question from Baguio?
Yes, sir, from Baguio City.
And is this a music program that they have, or?
It's a part of our institution. It's considered to be the Center for Culture and the Arts. So we have
Okay.
groups like the Glee Club, which is for chorale. We also
Okay.
have for dance. We also have for orchestra, and separately from concert band.
Ngayon po, may orchestra sila dyan?
Malit lang, sir. Hindi pa
Oh.
po. Yes, sir. Konti lang.
What I can do siguro for them, and I'd be very happy to do it, and they wouldn't have to worry about paying, it would be something I'd be very happy to do. Get in touch with me, show me some scores. And basically, if you can get them played. I want to hear what they sound like. If you can't, then just show me the score and I'll just read it myself. I can imagine naman what it's going to sound like. And I can offer tips, I can offer pointers, I can offer basically, okay, I would have done this way instead of this way. This is nice, try this naman, because my score reading has got very good naman. I can hear the sound, without an instrument, it's fine. So I would be happy to do that for them. Just not too many na lang kasi para yung oras, para mabigyan ko ng oras. I would like to give syempre each score a good week of my time to really, get in there and be able to give good feedback. I mean, next Friday we have a workshop with contemporary composers in Malaysia. I'm talking about contemporary art music and not pop. Yung talagang avant-garde, new music with a small ensemble here, and we're going to have them actually come to the hall and we're going to workshop their pieces. So I've been studying their scores also. So it'll be good timing because I'm in that mode now. I haven't really arranged a lot in a long time, but I can be of some help, I think. Pero wag lang po workshop. I wouldn't know really what to do. Pero kung ganon, where they let me read some of their stuff, kung ano man yun, I can help them.
Thank you very much, sir, for offering us. That would be a great help for us. And for my last question, sir, before the question of Sir Bombi, sa kasalukuyang katayuan bilang isang sikat na konduktor ng orkestra, ano ang iyong maiaambag sa kaunlaran ng musika, lalong-lalo na sa mga kabataan at sa susunod pang henerasyon?
Okay po. The first part of my answer to that would be, I don't like to think of terms like sikat. Every successful or every great musician I've met, whether conductor, orchestra player, soloist, whatever, they never use that term. So as far as I'm concerned, the term sikat should not be something to aspire to. Should not be something that anyone aspires to. No? What we should aspire to is to become worthy of the music that we serve. That should be the most important item on our agenda, not whether I get sikat or not. That to me is something that world I've left a long time ago. I used to operate in a world that really valued kasikatan, but I've left that and I don't value that at all. For me, it's about actually being. In fact, the slogan of my school, of Berkeley, is that it is esse quam videre, which is to be rather than to seem. Don't just make it look like magaling ka or whatever, you're great, ganun na yun ang gusto mong ipakita. Ang mahalaga dyan is, ano ka ba talaga? What, are you actually great or actually good? Are you actually competent? And that's more important than looking so or being sikat. So anyway, as a musician who gets the opportunity to perform with people, with lots of different people in different places, and I've been very fortunate to get to that point. Para sa ikauunlad ng bansa or ng musika sa ating bansa, one thing that I'm able to do is lend credibility to Filipino musicians, because I am a Filipino musician. It's the same thing that Cecile Licad was able to achieve, or even Leia, is that wherever she goes, separate, your nationality is there. It's in your appearance, no? And if you do a good job, an actual good job, then that gives credibility to your origin, right? You become an example of a good Filipino musician. Already, everywhere I've been, Filipino musicians are really well known as very good natural musicians, by evidence of the pop bands all over the world na Filipino. Everyone knows that the best pop cover bands are Filipino. And that shows a strong natural inclination towards music, a strong natural aptitude for it. Good ears, good rhythm. Ngayon, if you're talking about ang ikauunlad ng musika in the sense that the earlier question about government funding for music programs, right? That takes money. Even the most famous music program in the world, which is El Sistema, right? In Venezuela, I'm sure you've all heard of that. If you don't know what El Sistema is, find out what it is. It's amazing. They had to rely on help from the Inter-American Bank, and to have teachers come in from Europe. These kids were taught by European teachers. I know a few people who were from El Sistema. I have personal friends. So one of them is here that really went through the system, and they were taught by European teachers. So that's not it. They were a lot of funding and support came from not just the state, but also from the Inter-American Bank. There was a lot of help given, because that's what it needs. That also answers my first point earlier about raising the level. Venezuela, they did it by bringing Europeans there to teach their kids, and that's why those kids are so good, because the teachers were amazing. And now they have a culture. It's now Venezuelan, passing it to the next generation of Venezuelans. But that first thing had to happen. So it takes a lot of political will. First of all, there has to be a willingness to do it. A love for music, understanding what great art does. That's the first thing. So education is key for people to realize that it's important. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Talk to people who don't know or understand, or who don't think that art is important. They have to understand first that art is important, or else they're not going to get any traction. Well, you can scream as loud as you want. They won't listen until they themselves understand the value of the art and why it's important for the soul of a nation.
Thank you for that, Maestro Gerard. And yes, I still have several questions here. Paano yan? Hanggang bukas pa tayo. No, but I'm going to focus down to just a couple of questions. Actually, it's not a question. It's more of inspiring messages for our young aspiring conductors. As you know, we have a lot of young aspiring conductors in the Philippines. Like in a band, which I think we have around 3,000 bands in the whole of the Philippines, to count as much. But and with these bands, you'll have around 10 aspiring or even more young conductors. In fact, in an orchestra here in the Philippines, pag tinawag mo yung isa, Maestro, ang daming lilingon sa'yo.
Ang dami sumasagot. Oh.
Kasi puro mga maestro sa banda. Anyway, ganun ang training kasi, and a lot of young conductors, young aspiring conductors would like to really learn the real essence of being a maestro. Actually, a maestro, no? Kasi conductor is just the one waving the baton, but a maestro is the one who teaches the band, who teaches music, who teaches everything, discipline, so on and so forth. And I would like to share what you have been talking about since the start at 8 o'clock has been the journeys of the conductor, as in opportunities and passion. Like opportunities, they don't just come. I think you chase them, right? And in building the opportunities or creating opportunities, you should have this passion in music. Okay, I don't really know. Each and every one of us might have different means and ways of chasing opportunities. But what is your formula in life? How come you have had all these opportunities in front of you and you've taken them, and you have been very successful in all of them? What is your way of dealing with your development as a musician?
Sir Bombi, ang katotohanan niyan is what really just drives me forward is my love for the music. That's really what it is. I mean, lahat naman tayo, we understand that in any sort of journey, you're going to arrive at, forks in the road, and you choose one or the other, and that will affect kung ano yung next na mangyayari sa'yo. Or you meet someone that changes your path, or there's so many elements of luck along the way. Na sometimes you just have to be, basically you have to be ready. Ang tatay ko always told me that he never believed in luck. Para sa kanya, ang ibig sabihin ng luck is when an opportunity arrives and you're prepared to take the opportunity. Kasi kung yung dumating yung opportunity tapos hindi ka naman preparado, you'll fail. Wala, you'll go down, di ba? So you have to be ready for the opportunity to come. If you're ready, then it seems like there are more opportunities. The better you are, the luckier you get. That's also another saying. So you have to focus on bettering yourself, and on whose standard. No, for me, there's only one standard. I don't say standard sa Pilipinas or standard sa bansa na to or whatever. No, there's only really one standard, right? So you have to aspire to that singular standard. That's not gonna go down for you. Ang basketball, the rim ng basketball is at 10 feet. It won't go down dahil 5'2" lang yung height mo. That will stay there at 10 feet kung 7-footer ka o 4'11". Diba? So you have to hold yourself to a fixed standard, not yung standard lang ng barangay namin, or yung standard lang dun sa syudad namin, or standard sa probinsya namin, standard sa bansa ko. Hindi. Isa lang yung standard, at yun ang asintahin mo. And everything else doesn't matter. There's just one standard. So that's the first thing I think. If young conductors are aspiring, they have to look at that standard. So if for example, if I were leading a concert band, what is my standard of gold standard go as far as bands are concerned? Now, personally, one of my favorites is the Eastman Wind Ensemble. I'm sure we all know who that is, and we all know what they sound like. Diba? So, kung yan ang magiging standard ko, yun ang hahabulin ko. And I will not rest until I'm able to get that result. Ganun lang. Diba? Kung ano man yung kailangan kong gawin para ma-achieve ko yung result na yun. Do I have to go and take lessons from someone? Do I have to learn score reading? learn score analysis? Do I have to audition for a conducting job to learn from a maestro, or do I have to study at a conservatory para I can be exposed to these things? Diba? So you have to have your long-term goal. What is it you want? And then how do I do that given the tools that I have at my disposal? You know, we're very lucky. Like you said, how many thousand bands, Sir Bombi? Ilan? Tatlo?
No, the last
Libo?
count was 3,000 all around the Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sabihin natin 1,000. Sabihin lang natin, 1,000 bands. That is 1,000 conductors na merong ensemble na pwedeng gamitin to strengthen themselves, to learn from, and to become better at conducting. No? I would say to them, first step, make yourself as good as a musician first as you can be. Because if you're not a good musician, you will not be a good conductor. Now, what does good musician be? Remember, you have to separate. Pwede kasing magaling akong violinista, pero hindi ako magaling na musician. Di ako kaganon kagaling na flutista, pero magaling akong musician. There you have to be you have to separate those. It's for me, it's important for a conductor to be a very strong, very good musician. Musicianship, your sense of rhythm, sense of pitch, intonation, understanding harmony, all these things. That makes you a good musician. And you have to be a good musician to stand on the podium. After all, you're being judged on how your ensemble sounds, not how you sound. Conductor's not even making a sound. He's the only guy there on the stage who cannot make a sound. So it is how you impart those musical values to your ensemble. So you have to be an excellent musician, or you have to earn that right. Remember, standing on that podium is a privilege that must be earned. It's not a right. Right? You cannot say. You have to be able to get yourself to the level that you can say, I can stand on that podium and correctly conduct this orchestra or conduct this band. But you have to be deserving. You have to be a musician who deserves deserves the respect of your fellow musicians, and deserves the responsibility of preparing this piece for people to consume. That's a tremendous responsibility. So these young musicians have to understand what that responsibility is. No, you can't just take some hack, put them on the podium and make them do this. That's going to be conductor ka na. It doesn't work like that. Diba? So just the responsibility that the outcome lies on your shoulders. That's tremendous. And secondly, become as good a musician as you can be. See, Maestro Fukumura was telling me a story because he studied with Franco Ferrara, one of the greatest conducting teachers from Italy. And what Maestro Ferrara would do was he would have a certain drill for conductors, where certain parts, like 3 bars, would be taped out or blank, or advise the musicians in the part, rest here, don't play. This one, rest here, don't play. So they'd be incomplete. It will be the conductor's job to sing the blanks. So that's a good exercise to sing the blanks, because if you cannot detect, number one, that there's a problem, number two, what's the solution, then that's part of your job as a conductor. That entails a high degree of musicianship. If I were to teach a young musician how to conduct, I would tell them, okay, I want to see you next week. Sing every part in this score for me. Sing it, just sing it. Because you have to sing on the podium. Wala ka namang piano dun, wala ka namang clarinete dun to help you demonstrate. You have to sing for the orchestra. So I would ask a young musician, probably, just sing all these parts for me. I wanna know, Sing this horn in E. Diba sa mga Brahms symphony, may mga horn in E. Sing this. What does this sound like? Or here's your tonal center. I'll play A major, for example. Okay, now sing me the horn in E part. Okay, sing me the clarinet in A. Diba? Merong sing me the English horn. All these transposed instruments. Sing me the viola. You have to read to you in C clef. Just their ears to understand what's going on, because you have to be able to do that. How could anyone who can't do that even have the right to stand up there on that podium? But I think the first step is to understand the significance of the person on that podium, what the qualities, musical qualities, that this person has to have, and what is acceptable and unacceptable. We have to understand that, and I think when that happens, then slowly the level will go up. But an understanding of standards and not limiting the standard, having one standard that everyone in the world aspires to, and then aiming for that standard. That's one of the things that I would advise.
Wow, that's great. Yes, and then I hope that the members, because we will also post this in the group of music conductors, an organization of young conductors here in the Philippines, and I'm sure that they'll benefit from your lecture on being a good conductor, with all these passion and opportunities, and how to prepare for their goals. And being a maestro is really tough. I mean, it's a tough job, and you have to take care of a lot of the aspects of being a conductor, as in teaching musical knowledge, the physics of conducting, the techniques, and the communication, the psychology. Which aspect of conducting is the most difficult for you to tackle?
I'm at, how do I say this without sounding, yung naman yung dating napakayabang, pero it's not naman that it's not about being boastful or whatever, but I'm at the point where it's I don't see it as a certain thing being harder or more difficult. When I was younger, one of the things that was most daunting would probably be just, am I doing this right? The question marks in my head. Am I doing this correctly? Am I rehearsing this correctly? Am I hearing this correctly? Am I maximizing what the performance can be like? Those are the things that really ate away at me when I was younger. Now, because I've had the opportunity to see so many great maestros do it from their first rehearsal until the performance. That I already have an internal compass, an internal meter. I already myself can tell, okay, today's the second rehearsal. Okay, this is going well, or it's not going well, and I have to do something. So, siguro, ang sagot ko dyan, Sir Bombi, is early on, it was those question marks that were the most disturbing to me, siguro. How good is this going to get? How good can I get it? Is it good enough? Yun, ganon yung mga questions ko. Now I'm able to at least say with some degree of confidence now, okay, today's first rehearsal is Thursday. Kasi the way we work here, we work Thursday, Friday, then concert Saturday, Sunday. Ganun lang kabilis. And you have to have a very strong sense of how it's going. Am I going too slow? Am I behind time? Am I behind schedule here? By this time, how good should this already be? And here, it's already very good from the first time you play it, because the orchestra is a high level. But you wonder, what's the level that even they would say now, oh, this is a great concert. So it's knowing that, knowing where you want to go, where am I, how far do I have to go to get there. With time, there's really no other recipe. Years and of experience to tell you, to be able to build your internal compass, and to be able to say, now, okay, this is going to be a good concert, or I better do some better work now this afternoon, because it's not going to be a good concert if I don't. Ganon. I have fewer question marks now, but that would be the one that bothered me the most when I was learning pa. Am I making this good? Am I doing this Am I helping this music? Is it going to be a good concert? Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yes, I still remember the time during the Philharmonica. I think you were quite fresh in the Philippines during the time of Philharmonica, and yeah, I've observed that you were so open-minded with everything, and one good thing that I noticed, that we noticed about you, is that you can deal nicely with a lot of musicians, with a lot of different psychological thinking of these musicians and different attitudes, and that was a very good thing with you. And what you have contributed in the Philippine scene of music was a very fantastic change in standard. Like Philharmonica, ABS-CBN, this is where we experienced, not only for musicians but also for the audience, a more acceptable sound of the orchestra, which have not really been perceived or achieved before. It was, I didn't say that the orchestra sounded bad before. No, they were sounding good, but this was different. You had a different concept of sound and this different concept of programming that it impacted. It had a good effect on the Philippine community. Now, of course, part of this is also preservation of our culture. Like each and every musician should have this advocacy of preserving our culture, and one way of doing this is by getting more compositions and arrangements about our folk songs or even tribal music, things like that. And that is the thrust now of Pasambap. Actually, is in the advocacy of Pasambap is to preserve our culture for future generations to enjoy. And I don't know. I don't know if this is the proper time to ask you or to even tickle your mind on how's about folk song arranged in the new genre, or maybe in the sound of John Williams. Just to be able to make the current audience appreciate our folk music, as in a remix, something like that, or even bring back the zarzuela in a modern setting, maybe something like that. And we musicians we cannot do it alone. I mean, we can just perform it, but somebody has to be creative on this to be able to realize the preservation of our culture. What do you think? Will this be a good
Yeah, sir.
project for us?
I mean, marami tayong talented na arrangers sa atin. There's so many now. There are a lot of established veterans and a lot of young people who are very, very talented. And these are guys who play in bands, in symphonic bands. So, dapat Pasambap should reach out to these guys kasi malapit sa puso nila eh. There's going to, it's not just, it won't be just a project for them for today. It's going to be it will hit a point of passion for them. And that's going to be good because it will ensure that the effort that they'll put in will be very, very high. So, mag-reach out kayo, sir, sa mga daming talented na arrangers natin dyan ngayon na who can work with you on these projects. Who I'm sure would be delighted to do it because these are good ideas. Then you should meet with them and shoot some of these ideas to them and see what can be done. Or even commission a newly composed work for symphonic band and premiere it in the Philippines. That will be advancing. Cause it's one thing to preserve, and it's another thing to think about 30 years from now. What will they have to look back on that was created in 2021? Diba? If in 2051, are they going to look back at 2021 and say, oh, wow, a lot of good music was composed? Or are they going to say a lot of good music was preserved, fantastic, but is there going to be a void? Is there going to be a blank as to continual development, continual musical output? So you have to always think that way. How is history going to judge us? 30, 50, 100 years from now as to what happened during our time. And what kind of a legacy we want to leave. Diba? So it's two sides, preservation kasi is retrospective, and then you have now and forward, what's going to be there. So it's up to the younger generation now to really kickstart all of these things.
All right. Thank you very much, Gerard, for your wonderful encouragement especially to Filipino musicians. And we've been taking so much of your time already. And as we've said, we can converse on so much more. Yes.
Oo, ang damang haba-haba ng usapan na to for sure. Namiss kita, Sir Bombi. It was nice to connect with you again. See you.
Yes, and let's think of other projects for us to be working together again soon.
Marami yan. Maraming pwede.
Yes, and yes, thank you. Maraming salamat talaga.
Maraming salamat din sa inyo for doing this for our fellow musicians.
And as we go on, thanking Gerard and capping up this webinar. Our next schedule here, we've come up with several series for our webinars. We have the Philippine Festival series and the Maestro series, and of course tonight's the first program is a TOYM series with Maestro Gerard Salonga. Maraming salamat, Maestro. And our next speakers will be Chito Sakdalan for the Maestro, Chino Toledo, TOYM, and lots of them are TOYM awardees, Dean Raul Sunico, Ray Abeliana of Cebu, Tony Maige, the flutist, and we have a feast of San Isidro Labrador, and Coke Balipata and Grace Nono. And some more future speakers within the list, and we have been mentioning this for several webinars already, and hopefully they confirm their schedules so that we can come up with a new list. And for those who would like to catch up with the online workshop, you can watch them here in Pasambap Live. And for those who are not able to see these webinars in Pasambap Live or who are late in catching up with the show, you can always go to Pasambap Banda, search for Pasambap Banda in YouTube. And once you get there, just click on the playlist, the one in circle right here in the yellow circle. If you click the playlist, the folders will come out, and our videos are organized in the folders like competitions, webinars, concerts, and stuff like that. And of course, this is also where you'll be able to watch once again our projects of virtual presentations like this one last Valentine. All right, so this is one of the events that we can do during our new normal situation. And the member of Pasambap, just send your name, location, profile history. Our membership fee is very minimal, and this is where we find friendship, unity, and teamwork, so as we can come up with projects for our musicians. And this is where we get our knowledge, technique, and experience as what we have experience with Maestro Gerard Salonga, and our support as we support each other by sharing materials and even manpower. Musicians, you need musicians, just let us know, and we will share our musicians with you in as part of our membership. And of course, this is where we get enough education, opportunities for education, in fact, and livelihood programs. And of course, this is our FB group, Pasambap Official. Remember that always have the official included in your search, Pasambap Official, as there are many groups imitating our FB group. And of course, let us thank Sir Rolf Campo, the Vice President of Pasambap, Ariel Constantino, the Secretary, Paul Atienza, Dr. Paul Atienza, the Treasurer, Ms. Marivic Macadaeg, Auditor, and Saturnino Chamson, our Public Relations Officer, for having this webinar possible. Thank you very much, and maraming salamat din po sa mga nanood, mga sumusubaybay sa ating webinar sa Pasambap. Ingat-ingat po tayo. Maraming salamat, Maestro Gerard Salonga. God bless and good night.